name is Ali. I started off life as a biochemist at Imperial College, looking at chemical pathology of breast cancer. I then went to St Mary's Hospital Medical School, graduated as a clinician in the year 95. I've been a doctor for the past 30 or so years, primarily in the acute care kind of context, so patients in resuscitation unit and kind of trauma reconstructive surgeries where I've spent most of my career. I still practice a couple of days a month, but I left full-time medicine in 2000, MBA at London Business School, and then started off as an investment banker initially at Goldman Sachs. Then I moved to UBS and then moved to Blackstone in 2014. I spun the Blackstone healthcare team out to form Treehill Partners, and I've been running that with my team for the past 11 years. I think about 70% of companies that we've met in the past 6 months are currently uninvestable. So if we look at the meetings that we had at Jefferies at the end of last year, at JP Morgan, there's about 300 companies we met. I'd say about 70% are uninvestable. Interestingly, it's not because they don't have great molecules or great science, it's that they have a capabilities gap. And in those situations, what you have is companies that have been on a financial starvation diet for the past 4 or 5 years. They've naturally had to either let teams go, rely on fractional team members, or in some cases, just go without. So now we're at a point where when an investor looks at a company, they say, I like your molecule, I want to give you the money. Do you have the team that can take that and move it forward? And about 70% of cases, that isn't that the company, the management isn't actually there. So you've got companies that aren't preparing adequately or as thoroughly for a capital raise. That's very obvious when they go out. They're not being as adequately supported by banks because very few deals are getting done. So bankers naturally will take on more deals and spend less time per deal. So when companies are coming to us, when we're representing investors, they're just not prepared. They don't really know what the clinical trial protocol looks like. And there is that gap. That gap, I think, over time is going to get bigger. And that gap is a significant hindrance in terms of capital being redeployed in the healthcare industry. Yeah, it is. You know when you go to the beach and there's that round ring that you can throw in, and sometimes the round ring also has a rope attached to it. The analogy here is that rope hasn't got any shorter or longer. Biotechs have just moved offshore a bit. Investors are saying, well, this is the length of my rope, and you know, when you get to the ring, I'll rescue you. And biotech's like, I can't get to the rope. So there is a complete disconnect between what companies need to get to that ring versus what investors are willing to do. And the other thing here is there's no huge penalty to sit on cash. So investors are saying, well, look, I'd rather not lose money, so I'll just sit on it for a while. And CROs are frustrated, as we saw early on this week. CROs are frustrated, saying, like, nobody's actually doing deals. Nobody is appointed for clinical studies. It's like, well, they don't have the money for it. Investors are saying, well, companies aren't ready. Large cap pharma saying, I'm seeing the quality go down. And you're like, you can kind of see why. I'll give you a medical answer and a transactional answer to this. So when politicians are, so I'm going to say neutral from a politics perspective. So this isn't I'm representing one party or another. If we take the view that we're here to help patients get innovative drugs, and as a doctor, we need to do the safest thing for patients, and that is our common goal, that should be irrespective of which political party we are, which geography we are, and that becomes gender, racial, everything else neutral, because that's your common goal. So when politicians make a decision, as a clinician, you sit there thinking, on what basis are you making a decision? You're not qualified to make a decision. And what I mean by that is, during my 30-year career as a clinician, when someone says something, as an older, grumpier doctor, you look at it and say, what is the basis for you to have said what you said? Have you been a breast cancer surgeon for the past 20 years, in which case you have an opinion? Are you someone who's done a course and for 3 weeks and all of a sudden you have a certificate, in which case your opinion has a different basis? If we look at politically run decisions, the politicians typically defer to scientists for their decision-making process. So if we look at historically, during COVID, the decision-making process, and I'll focus on the UK, was that the UK government decided to ignore clinicians. It went to scientists. It went to scientists who probably haven't touched a patient ever. And if they have, it's probably 30 years ago. So as clinicians, where we were saying to them, look, there is a pattern of COVID and there is a way of dealing with COVID, we were overruled and sidelined because the politicians were making scientific decisions based on certain scientists. So COVID, which has, if you sneeze in a room, it would get to anywhere in that room, we then ended up having a 2 meter, safety zone, which was scientifically and medically illogical. With a bit of political pressure, that became a meter. Well, if 2 meters was the right scientific decision, no matter how you make a political decision, why would a meter be more safe than anything else? With PPEs, we felt comfortable that we didn't need surgical grade PPEs. We just needed some sort of mouth covering, which again were clinically ineffective. So whenever politicians have stepped in and run a medical system, and the same way politicians stepped in and ran a legal system, they're not overall grounded in understanding how does this affect the patient. Now, going back to the current situation, when the current administration came in, our view at Treehill was and continues to be that RFK Jr. and his team overall will lead any conversation on scientific basis and scientific rationality. We've embraced the fact that change is good, and there are a lot of things in the healthcare industry that could be improved. And maybe this is a time to improve those. Maybe this is a time to improve the efficiency of drug development. Maybe this is the time to take away a lot of the red tape, take away a lot of the scientific work that is funded by governments that never leads anywhere. So I'm much more into the let's have a disruptive period that allows us to improve from that. The difficulty from an investing perspective is you can't quantify it. So if I say something to a audience, people will say, Ali's view scientifically, medically is weighted on 30 years experience. Do I like him? Do I trust him? Do I agree? Do I partially agree? Or do I completely disagree? When a politician makes a statement, it comes across as a belief statement as opposed to a scientifically grounded one. And when you are looking to invest in a company, you can't invest in belief systems. So what investors are doing that I can see is they're taking a step back and saying, okay, the vaccine changes that have come in, we expected that. We kind of expected it earlier than 6 months. What has it meant? During his time frame, people have taken a step back. Now they're going to say, well, I'll come back in 2026 to see where this lands. The reason I'm belaboring the point is typically where you make money is where everybody runs away. Everybody says it's a really difficult market. I don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty. That's where the investment opportunities come in. That's when there's a scientific uncertainty. When there's a political uncertainty on a scientific or a medical drug development, investors can't take a view because you can't logically predict what's going to happen or not. In which case, people then just take a big step back. And I think that's what's happening. So my team and I will be at Bio. We'll be there in full force. We have over 200 meetings. We have meetings where we are meeting significant number of Asian clients looking to access capital in the US or in Europe. We have a lot of we're representing a number of companies looking for licensing partners, and we are representing a number of investors looking for opportunities. So for us, what are we excited about? We're excited about that this is a period of uncertainty, which we believe is an opportunity. And of the 30% of companies that we think are currently viable, unless something changes, this is a time where what we're noticing at Bio is typically you'd meet, just say you had an outreach, reach out to 50, 60 people, 30 would meet, five of them would really be serious in having a conversation. This is a conference where those five are coming back and the rest of companies are not really engaging. So I think that we expect this bio to be a very targeted, meaningful series of interactions that lays up the rest of the year in a sense of what are we expecting between here and, for example, JP Morgan of next year. The team can find us. They can reach out to us on the bio system. We do have a number of slots still available to meet. So I think this will be a meeting of minds. And from a Treehill perspective, what we're excited about is because we're there, as I said before, we're there as operators, so we're there as operational management. We're there with people who've got a couple of billion to invest. We're there with people looking for money, and we're both on the buy side and the sell side. It's a great 4 or 5 days to get a temperature of the market of where is this market going to go. The next real touch point for us becomes kind of Jeffries in November, and to see what the delta is between um, pre-summer and kind of post-summer where the market's going to go.